Well, welcome to the Haven Community Conversations podcast, where we talk about faith, life, and everything in between. And this week, we have Jason Willingham. He's the carpenter that I prayed for in this church. We do have, Kevin Wyndham. He's a carpenter as well. He does a lot of really good work. But Kevin just retired recently, and he would work in Florida. So half the time he would be in Florida. So I really appreciate Jason, first and foremost, just being your friend and having you here in this church, but also appreciate all the wonderful things you've done, like building us an AV booth and installing our cabinets and all the other awesome things that you've done. But how you doing, man?
Doing good.
Doing good. All right. Well, one of the things that first comes to mind is when I think about you and Amber is how you guys found this church. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I started playing Pokemon when it first come out, and after a while of playing, I needed another friend, so I talked to Amber into creating an account to play. So she's like, yeah, I don't mind playing, but we didn't want to walk a whole lot at the time, and so we decided to start playing out here in spring. There was plenty of spinners for us to play, and we spent a lot of time riding around out here. And we kept seeing the sign for the church, And then Amber's like, well, let me look into it. So she went online and looked into the church page and everything. And she's like, I think we really need to give them a chance. So, when she was ready to start, that's when we stopped by and started.
Yeah.
And that was about 2 years ago.
Yeah. Didn't you say, I thought I remember you saying that this was did y'all see that this was a hub? It was still set up. I forget what you call it on Pokemon Go. I only played it when it. What's that?
It was a spinner.
A spinner?
Yeah. There's a spinner here for the church and for Gentry Square, and there's a gym, and there's creatures pop up out here because it's like a spawn site. The entire Old Town Spring is like a spawn site. So there's plenty of spinners and things going on, that you can battle and that you can spend time just enjoying yourself with the shops, just being able to walk around into the shops. A lot of Pokemon's played in parks and stuff like that.
Right.
But so out here, you got the entire shopping that you can be doing while you're playing and everything like that.
When did that get popular? Was it during COVID or was it before COVID?
It got popular before COVID.
Because people were out.
Yeah, because people were out.
Sense.
And then when COVID came around, it kind of slowed down. And Pokemon tried to do some changing in the game where they expanded out the distances away to help people keep the distance away from each other to be able to play. So
yeah, I just thought it was cool because back then, I guess it was before COVID, everybody's playing Pokemon. So I played it for a little bit, short period of time, but I set this up as a spinner, y'all said?
Yeah.
Yeah, I set this up as a spinner. I was like, yeah, Pokemon evangelism. And it worked.
Yeah.
Yep, here y'all are. Of course, y'all already knew the Lord, but y'all it brought y'all in, so that's awesome. I love that story. Jason, what's something you do to unwind?
I read. I like doing woodworking, 3D printing. I spend most of my time with Amber. She's my best friend. That's what I spend all my time for. You know what I mean? It's like the guys at work joke at me. I spend most of my lunch talking to her. So, I mean, that's what we do. So
that's awesome. Yeah. My wife is my best friend as well. I mentioned at the beginning that you do you've done a lot of projects in the church. Do you remember the first thing you built as a child or teenager or adult?
Not really. I mean, I've done a lot of things in my life. I think the very first thing that I built was like a little card index box for my mother for her recipes for her to put her index cards in. So
nice.
That was one of the first things.
Yeah,
I can remember.
What's the you recently, and you mentioned it earlier, you recently got a 3D printer. you've been putting that to good use. I know you've made me and some other things for the church and for other people in the church.
I just enjoy doing it. I mean, it's something that I just recently got into, but I enjoy working with the mechanics and the stuff using the AutoCAD, to figure things out, shaping and stuff like that. It's a lot of fun. That helps me unwind. That's what I do to relax,
Yeah.
actually.
What's one of the more interesting things you've created?
One of the more interesting things is Sam had asked for a gift that she wanted for a friend of hers. That it was she wanted a potted plant, but she wanted it in the shape of figurine of a unicorn. So she talked to Chat GPT and got them to make up like a model of what she wanted. And she sent that over to me, and I took it into one program and made a 3D model of it, and then took it into AutoCAD so that I could actually hollow it out and make it actually a potted plant and make the drainage holes in it. And then I took it over to my slicer and had to add colors to it and everything like that, and then printed it up for her. And she really enjoyed it. And from what I understand, her friend really liked it. I kept the file myself, and I've printed it out a second time, but instead of printing it out in multiple colors, I printed it out in one solid color, and I'm working on painting it for Amber for when we move into our house.
Cool.
that she has it. So.
Yeah, that thing was cool. I got to see that. How long did that take to print?
I think the color print was a little over 2 days.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a little over 2 days for it to print out completely.
Do those things come in different speeds or?
Yeah, the older printers print really slow. I'll give you an example. I have an older Ender, and the small little dragons that I give away sometimes to the kids, just printing those out, take right at like 14 hours to print it. And my newer printer that I have, I can print them out in about 5. So
Wow.
and depending on the material also depends on the speed and the temperature and stuff like that with it.
Wow.
So
Are you using this? Are you kind of starting a little side business with it?
yes, I am starting a little side business with it. I do more custom work than I do anything else. I mean, I make the dragons up for me to go do markets with, but that's just to get a little bit of sales and talk to people. I've worked on like logo plates for people. I've done lithoframes for people. That's like the old lithograph frames how photography used to be. You print them up basically the same way, and you put a light behind it. It shows like the picture coming out of it instead.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm having requests for those now.
So the light actually helps you see. So
correct.
kind of a cheat, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you print it up.
I never could see those things, so I probably need the light.
Yeah, well, I mean, you print them up and it comes out like I'm doing a box, and it's basically 4 pictures. So I have a light that I stick into the back. It's got a flat surface on the bottom, and then there's 3 pictures on the sides and then 1 on top. And when the light's off, you can see like raised bumps and stuff on it but it basically looks just like it's white with a little bit of surface to it. And then when you put the light behind it, you actually see the full detail of the pictures and everything.
Cool.
So
yeah, that's very cool. If someone described you in 3 words, what do you hope they would say?
honest, faithful, intelligent.
Honest, faithful, intelligent. It's good. It's 3 good characteristics to have. Yeah. Very cool. Well, let's pray and then we'll dig in a little bit deeper.
Okay.
Father, thank you for my brother Jason, Lord. Thank you for this opportunity to talk with him and get to know him, and for those watching to get to know a little bit more about Jason and his story, Lord, and just ask you to bless our time together and help us to be present with one another, and Lord, and to be mindful of your presence, Lord, as you're present with us. We thank you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
So where'd you grow up? What kind of upbringing did you have?
I was a military brat, so I did a lot of traveling when I was younger. Born in Kansas, lived in El Paso, Texas, Mississippi, Germany, New York, back to Mississippi, and then ended up in Georgia about 5 years old. So everything was before I was five, and basically was raised in Augusta, Georgia.
Okay. Your father, what branch of the military?
He was in the Army.
He's in the Army. Okay. So you found yourself all over the place. How often were you moving?
Well, we moved 6 or 7 times before I was five.
Wow.
And then
Okay.
he got stationed in Augusta, Georgia in 76, I think it was, 76, 77. And besides spending a 1 year hardship tour over in Turkey, he, in 84, he spent a year in Turkey. Then he came right back to Augusta, Georgia. So he retired from there in 89, 90.
Okay. So what uh, was you ever in one place for very long?
And well, I mean, we were in Germany for 3 years. We spent,
What years was Germany?
Germany was from, I think, to 74. So like, no, my sister was born in 73. So it was from 73 to 76.
What age were you?
I was 2 to 5.
2 to 5. So you don't really remember Germany.
Well, I remember a couple little stories,
Yeah.
I remember a little bit, we left Germany, went to New York. My dad got out of the military. We went back home to my parents' house where they were raised in Mississippi. And then my dad rejoined the military, and then we moved to Georgia. So that's, all my moving was really before I was 5, 6 years old.
Yeah.
So I don't remember a whole lot of it, just stories from my parents about it for the most part. So.
Yeah. Well, that's the motherland for me. I'm 48% German. So, so when you said he retired, what age were you?
When he retired, I was 17.
You were 17. Okay. So you'd been moving around until you were 17 then?
No, well,
Something.
I mean, until I was 6, we moved around a lot. But when in 6, we got into Augusta, Georgia, and it's basically he was stationed there for many years, and then he spent a 1 year hardship tour away while we stayed there, and then he returned right back to the same base. So it was like from 6 to 17,
Yeah.
I was basically in one area. So
Yeah. So what was it like growing up?
that's kind of a somewhat of a loaded question. I remember things of it, but it was hard as a child for me. My father and mother really argued most of the time, and my mother played me against my father, and my father, he had a bad outlook towards me growing up, so it's never could do anything good enough
Yeah.
for him and stuff like that. He's in military intelligence and expected a way of life, and he always said that he raised me the way society wanted me raised, not the way he thought he should raise me. So it's it's kind of hard to have an understanding of what's supposed to be going on in life when your father's not even raising you the way he thinks you should. It's like,
He told you that then or afterwards?
oh no, then
Then.
yes, I remember that conversation at like 8 or 9 years old, and it was repeated
What
frequently.
did he mean by that?
So my father had this belief that of right and wrong, that in his mind, if it was right, it didn't matter if he was wrong or not. That was the way it was. And he was, it's the law as far as he's concerned, but he wanted me to learn that the way society was going at the time, it was like, everything wasn't defined as a direct right and wrong. There were things that were kind of like gray areas and stuff. And he had this belief that, the government was out to get everybody, even though he was part of the government. It was like,
I've seen that pattern.
Yeah,
In the
so
military. How did do you see how that maybe shaped you later on in adulthood?
because my father had that style attitude, he wasn't a father figure. He was more of like a dictator.
More like military, yeah.
Yeah. So I always said to myself growing up that I would not be like my father, that I would love my kids, that I would treat them with respect, and I would spend time with them, because that my father rarely ever did.
Yeah. What first pulled you towards faith in Christ?
It started out we had a neighbor that lived around the corner from us, and he talked my mother into letting me join the Cub Scouts. And then after I joined the Cub Scouts, he talked him into letting him to take me to church on Wednesday nights and on Sundays. And so that went quite well until I guess I was about 9, 10 years old. And I came home from church on a Sunday after I'd been baptized. And my parents basically, my mother said, I already had you baptized when you were a baby. And that was the last week I went till I was about 13.
They didn't let you go anymore?
No. My mother was Baptist. My father was Methodist. And they could never get along with.
Yeah.
So they weren't practicing, so
Yeah.
that was.
Yeah. Did that stick with you? What was that like? You're celebrating in baptism, and then
It was, at first I was heartbroken about not being able to go and learn more. And there was no, I had like a little New Testament Bible, and that's all I had, and it was hard for me at that age to, on my own, try to, further my faith. So, I know that I waned away from it. There was nothing, there was no encouragement. There was nobody there to help out or anything like that. I guess I was about 13 when I went back to another church, and that lasted for about a year when we moved.
Your parents went that time?
No.
When you were 13? You went with a friend or something?
I went with another neighbor.
Okay.
That lived in the same subdivision that I
Okay.
did, and I went for, I guess it was about 6 months to a year then, and then we moved again. We moved from one side of town. And as I say, we moved from the enlisted side of town to the rich side of town.
Yeah.
So, we were right underneath the entrance of the main gate at the base, and now we moved over to the rich side of town. And my parents did that so my sister would get a better education.
Okay.
So
that's. So when did you re-encounter the Lord again from there?
I had some friends that I had been talking to, when I started working. I'd run into, I had a guy I worked at Pizza Hut that was a nighttime manager that was very.
So you're still a teenager at this point, or
Yes,
early 20s?
I was a teenager. 17,
Okay.
17, 18 years old. So when me and him closed a lot, we would talk about it. And he knew that I had faith, but he knew I wasn't going to church or anything like that. I graduated from high school, joined the military, was off in the military 6 months. One of the worst. I don't say it's the worst decision, one of the worst decisions of my life, but I did not have a good time in my life at that time. I was trying to get away from my father's authority and being an alcoholic to going into the military where there's more authority and everything's much more stricter. And I was an alcoholic.
Yeah.
So
Were you an alcoholic going into the military?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I was an alcoholic before I got to the military. I was an alcoholic while I was there.
Yeah.
And even when I got out, I was still an alcoholic. So it's what I saw at home, you know.
You feel like, so you're trying to be different than your dad, and you ended up started going down the same road. Yeah.
Exactly. In 92, my sister graduated from high school. I was 21.
Mm-hmm.
And my parents had bought land in the early 80s in Florida. So we were in Georgia. They just up and moved. They just like, oh, we're moving to Florida. What do you want to do? And I'm like, I kind of like it here now. When I was growing up, I wanted to get away from them as quickly as I could. And then they're like, oh, we're moving. Okay, well, I'll stay here. That's what I thought was best for me at the time. And they moved to Florida and I stayed there. And because of still drinking and being an alcoholic and, partying as a kid and not caring about bills and everything's just slowly went south, lost my car, lost my apartment, moved into a trailer, lost that, lost my job and everything. And I ended up homeless in the fall of 93. And guess it was about October or something, and ended up living on the street, not knowing where my meals are coming from, looking in garbage cans, come around the spring. So there was a Catholic church that they had a basement area that they let homeless men come in and sleep in. The women had an actual room for them with cots and everything. The men did not. They were just down in the basement, sleeping on the floor. And in Augusta, it gets really cold. So usually you can only do it like once a month. But in January, February, and March, they were just allowing everybody to stay
there
quite frequently. So this led up to the week of the Masters in 94. And, I was staying there, getting one meal a night. And that was all I knew for sure that I was getting. And this is in downtown Augusta, Georgia, right up against the river. And, I remember it was a Tuesday, and I just, got up in the morning. They usher us out first thing in the morning, 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, ushered us outside. I walk outside, I'm sitting down on the bench, a bunch of guys all walking around and just all of a sudden, just worrying about life, worrying, where did I go wrong? What's going on with my life? What am I going to be doing next? If I'm going to be eating, if I'm going to see my family again. And I, sitting there on the bench, just thinking all about this. And I have a presence just sit down beside me now, just thinking, okay, there's not a whole bunch of benches out there, but it is a little nice park. And I hear my name called and I look over. And, sometimes I think back to this moment and I think it was Jesus, and sometimes I just think it was an angel's presence. And I'm told, everything you want in life, you will get. All you have to do is have faith in Jesus. That's it. And I started crying. I fell down on my knees and knew my life was going to be okay. And, I'm just so overwhelmed that, I'm going to get to enjoy life. I'm going to have a family because that's what I wanted. I wanted the wife, the kids, the house, the cars, and to me at the time, I wasn't worried about a big family or a big house or a car. And, that's what I wanted. That's what I truly wanted, to be able to continue my life and have the family and have the enjoyment in life. And this is, I'm 6 months of being homeless. And the very next day, is a Wednesday, and the church has a little surprise for us. Somebody's donated bus tickets to everybody that wants bus tickets in there. And the Augusta National Golf Course, their sandwiches that they had from the tournaments and practice rounds on Tuesday, they were giving to the homeless. So I had a lunch and a bus ticket. And another guy come up to me, he goes, I'm not going to use the bus ticket or eat the lunch. Here, you can have it. So I had 2 meals and 2 tickets. That allowed me to ride 2 different buses to get outside of town to the rich side of town where I'd previously lived, and talk to a guy that I knew that did roofing. And I had a job that afternoon, and he gave me a place to stay. And we went to a bar every afternoon he took a break between 11 and 3 for lunch, for the heat of the day, usually during the summer, but he did it all year round. But so there was a place that I could eat lunch at there. They took it out of my paycheck on Friday because he paid cash, and he had a place for me to stay. And my life started looking up from there right away.
Wow. I was wondering why when you were first telling the story, you mentioned the golf tournament, and I was like, that's interesting that he related. You said I was up there up until the Augustan tournament, and wow, that's a pretty cool story. Yeah. Wow. So the presence that sat beside you, was it a person? I mean, when you turned to your left or right or whatever, was there somebody there?
I turned to my left, and it was I say a physical presence. I mean, it was somebody. If I would have reached out and touched him, it was like a physical body, but it's not that I could actually see a defined face to it. It was like, I don't remember a defined face to it. I did look at the person, and you hear the words. I heard the words, but it's not like I physically can say they were speaking the words. It's just And sometimes I don't know. I try to look back at it now and go, were they speaking or did I just hear? It's
Yeah. It reminds me of course, I encountered an actual person. Probably one of the more mysterious things that's ever happened in my life was when I was mid 2000s, 2006, 7, something like that. I was eating lunch at a little cafe during my lunch break, and there was this preppy guy, but something seemed a little bit off with him, and he was carrying a shopping bag. He didn't look homeless. But I just had a fleeting thought of like, if that guy, would I be willing to, bless or associate or talk, help a guy like that. And it's weird. I was eating a club sandwich, and he came up to me nervously and asked when I was done if, again, he didn't look homeless, and asked if, when I was done with it, if he could have some of my sandwich. And so I just immediately pushed it across the table, and he's like, "What?" And I was like, "You can have it." And he's like, No, I'm just asking when you're done." I was like, "No, it's fine." So he sat down and we talked, and man, this interview's not about me, so I don't want to go into the whole details of the story, but man, I would have thought, Bible talks about sometimes we can be visited by angels and be unaware of it. And I could have maybe sworn that was an angel, except he said a cuss word. So I was just like, would God allow that? I don't know. But it was a very interesting. Either way, I think God spoke to me through the whole situation. But I think I would have walked away definitely confident that I might have seen an angel in human form. But I'm just not so sure about the cuss word, But anyways, that's a real cool and vulnerable story. Thanks for sharing that. One thing I think about though is, so about 6 months homeless or what?
Yeah, about 6 months.
About 6 months. Has that uh, has that shaped how you view or associate, relate to homeless people, or how others view homeless people? Or
Um,
that's not a
sometimes
loaded question.
no,
I'm
no,
just
it,
really
it no, no,
curious.
no. It's sometimes it does affect me. You know, give you an example. When we first moved out here to Houston, I lived in Augusta, and the only time I ever really, I grew up in Augusta. And the only time I ever saw the homeless was when I was homeless.
Hmm.
There wasn't a big majority of like camps or anything like that there. And I've lived in Florida, in Alabama, Mississippi, and now here in Houston. And besides my one mission trip to Atlanta, where we went to help the homeless, I never truly saw homeless campgrounds and stuff like that until I got out here to Houston. And it makes my heart pour out to those people to be in that situation, to not only to where they're in that situation, but now there's enough of them that there's a huge group of them that are living in tents and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And I see videos of them like in Chicago and New York, where they're all down the side of the roads, and then the city comes through and goes, "Okay, we're just going to clean the sidewalk up. We don't care about where y'all got to move
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
what y'all lose or anything like that." And it makes my heart go out to those people that are in that situation, even if it's their own fault. My homelessness was really my own fault. I didn't care about drinking or partying or paying my bills or
Hmm.
what went on. I didn't care at the time, but
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
I led my own into my own. And some people, it's not even under their own control.
Yeah.
you know Sometimes I feel led just driving down the road. I see somebody and it's like, oh, I want to stop over here and get them something to eat, or I
Yeah.
want to give them money. But there at the same time, I see the same person for 2 years standing out on the street corner begging for money. It's like,
Yeah. So what would be, with that kind of, you kind of given both worlds, or, two different ways of looking at it, would you have any advice for, you know, maybe other believers or just people in general in the way they approach the homeless?
uh, regardless, they are human beings, whether they're there of their own fault or by circumstance and stuff
Hmm.
like that. That they are human beings. God loves them just as much as He loves any other sinner. So
Hmm.
some of those can't help for themselves. You know,
Yeah.
Pray for those that you see.
Yeah.
Even if you don't feel led to help them out,
Yeah.
pray for them. And if you feel led to help them, help them.
Yeah.
You know, uh, I hear stories, quite frequently of somebody, the homeless guy come up to them, ask them for candles, and then they end up taking them shopping and spending a bunch of money to help the person out. And then, next time it's like, oh, well, all I got is $5 today,
Yeah.
or if you don't feel led, pray for them.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. I
it,
love that,
it,
man. I think what I hear you saying is, have empathy, and hearing a story like yours definitely creates empathy in me. I like how you said, why, you know, you said some people, like you said yourself, that a lot of that was by your choices. And the reason I appreciate you saying that is because I had a guy that I had baptized, and I was discipling him, and he came from a drug life of drug dealing and drug use. And he did good for a while, and then he slipped up and slipped back into it. Long story short, got him in a Christian rehab, and actually got him in a rehab later on, and another rehab later on, because he had slipped up after that. But when he was in this rehab, we went to the graduation ceremony, and hearing some of the guys talking that had come off the streets and stuff, you know, it was a realization for me that, yeah, they made the choices. But that's the thing, though, is like, you know, people say, you know, well, that guy's, you know, homeless. All he does is, you know, he's just going to buy booze and drugs, and understand that. But there's a reason that they're in the situation. They have a story behind that. You had a story of what got you there. Every homeless person has a story of what got them, even if they're out of their mind now. You know what I mean? There's a story that got them there. So just having empathy. But I also like what you said. You know, you can have boundaries, you know, but make sure you're doing it out of love and caring for what's best for them. If you know, you're convicted that, hey, they're just going to use it on drugs, well, maybe I'll go buy them a sandwich, or I'll find a different way, or pray for them, or whatever. There's different ways to minister. Just make sure you're doing it out of love and not passing them off as you know, because I definitely I just don't see Jesus smiling upon, you know, when we have just a hateful attitude towards those who were in those situations. So. But again, thanks for sharing. I had no idea until today that you were homeless for a while. What's one way you've seen God work in your marriage with Amber?
I have a very strong faith. And because of that faith, it allows me to be strong for her. And when she had her cancer diagnosis, you know, it wasn't that, you know, I had faith that it was all going to be okay. One way or another, I had faith it was going to be okay. I was able to be Amber's rock and be sturdy for her while she struggled with what was going on in her life and all the possibilities and everything. And because, you know, I had the faith and was talking to her about it, you know, God's going to take care of this. You know, it's all going to be okay. It helped her be steadfast in her faith as well, knowing that God was going to take care of it. Now, her mind would, you know, I don't really like saying this a whole lot, but, you know, women, their minds work differently than men's do, and they are more emotional and more worried about things than men normally do. So that, you know, that played some with her with the cancer treatment and everything and the diagnosis. So
yeah. I was going to ask you, what's a season where your faith has been really stretched? I know you've kind of already shared a couple of those.
Our oldest son, Neil, he had stomach issues, and it ended up being an inflamed appendix, and it ended up just being a pinhole in it. It hadn't completely ruptured, but it just was a pinhole, and it had filled up his entire bowels. So with that and the gangrene setting in, he ended up having an emergency appendectomy, and he's got a scar all the way across. And they took some of his large intestines and quite a bit of his small intestines because it had gangrene in it. And, you know, when we first arrived at the hospital, you know, she goes with him into the emergency room, and, you know, she's waiting in the back, and I'm down in the lobby because, you know, this was an emergency surgery. You know, we weren't even, you know, I was in the emergency room and she was in the back waiting room and everything like that. And then they come out saying, you know, it's like 6 hours later, and I'd called the pastor and one of the deacons at the church we were going to at the time. They came up and, you know, were sitting with me and her, and she was allowed to go with him from the recovery room over to the room, and I had to walk over outside because the emergency room was in this building and the residence rooms were over in another section. So I walked around outside, and just to, you know, having the faith that everything was going to be okay, but hearing the doctor say surgery's over with, it went well, we had to take a lot of it and everything, and walking outside and to have, you know, to have the relief, it overwhelmed me with relief. And these two gentlemen helped carry me over to the hospital because I couldn't walk. I was so, so celebrated with, that my son was going to be okay,
Yeah.
so.
Man, nothing like the love for a child, man. Just seeing your children suffer. Hmm. Um, so you've helped in facilitating our small groups, our growth groups, and now we've we started doing the men's gatherings once a month. Um, what is it about that brings you joy? Not just participating, but kind of facilitating
Uh,
and leading some of those type things.
you know, um, I was told when I was younger that, by a couple of different people that they saw me basically leading in a church role,
Hmm.
uh, the way they had led it on to me was in a pastoral role. And I thought for quite a while that that's where, I was eventually going to lead to. My life did not take the correct turns for that. God
Hmm.
had something other planned
Hmm.
for me. When my kids were teenagers, I helped with the youth department at one church. I took the boys a lot to go to concerts and spending time playing disc golf together, and just preaching the word to them, helping them to be young men
Hmm.
and stuff. And some of the things like over Mississippi, a lot of young men join the military. And believe it or not, my story, my background of trying to get away from my father's role
Hmm.
and getting into alcohol and stuff like that gave me a chance to talk to these young men about going into the military. You know, don't do it for running away from a home
Yeah.
life or
Yeah.
from
Yeah. Yeah.
authority or anything like that. And getting into alcohol because that's what I saw my father, and the alcohol drew me away from dealing with what was going on in my life. So with the youth, that helped me work with the youth. After that, me and Amber worked with, I did couples classes just for
Okay.
couples.
Hmm.
Not necessarily new couples, but just couples in general,
Yeah.
just to, how relationships between the couples and with God were supposed to work,
Hmm. Hmm.
as far as like the man leading, the
Hmm.
wife is to help support and
Hmm.
stuff like that, what the roles were and how
Hmm.
it was supposed to work as, like basically a triune between the three of them,
Hmm. Hmm.
they were to put God first and
Hmm.
then their spouse second,
Hmm.
and, taught a class toward that. So, and I enjoy the discussions, getting different people's views, getting
Hmm.
different people's opinions on things. I enjoy leading because me diving into and reading and understanding, allows me to get more understanding of the Bible in the
Yep.
way I read it, and then trying to look at what other people are saying about what I'm discussing or what I'm
Yeah.
wanting to read helps out. I go on a lot of rabbit trails,
Yeah.
just
In
little
your studies.
things. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
With our group on Wednesday nights, great group of people.
Yeah. Hmm.
Everybody that comes, enjoy everybody that's there.
Hmm.
Whether they speak up or not, just them being there, being part of it.
Hmm.
Getting fed. I enjoy looking into it, hearing everybody's opinions. I like hearing what's going on with everybody's life.
Yeah.
And with the men's breakfast that we're doing once a month, I enjoy looking into it. And, believe it or not, when I look up these things, I'm not what I'm reading and understanding and trying to give out to all them. I'm preaching to myself first.
Yeah.
That's,
Hmm.
that's what it's for. It's
Yep.
for me first.
Yep.
Y'all get the benefit,
Yeah.
that's the way I look at it. It's for me first, and then y'all get the benefit of what I'm doing for myself, and then let's discuss it and see how we all work this out.
Yeah. It's good. That's real good. Yeah, some of the things you speak to is the same joys I get out of uh, of pastoring. Yeah, just I learn myself. That's one of the selfish reasons I like teaching is and preaching is the work that I put into it is a heavy study
Yeah.
every time I do it. What's something that you're still learning or curious about when it comes to following Jesus?
My biggest holdback, my biggest drawback, even from an early age, was open or vocal prayer in groups, and I still struggle with that. I do. When I was younger, it was so much that I didn't know it when I was first saved, but I knew that I had fear. Let me put it this way. I had fear of speaking out in public, being a young child. I didn't know it at the time, but I have a learning disability. And it took me a long time took a long time for my parents to realize I had one. Took even longer for the school to understand what it was. And I've learned to hide it since then, but still it's in the back of my mind. I have problems with words, small words, to the and of, is it. I don't read them.
Okay.
I
Just
don't
read right over it.
I
Yeah.
read right over it. Amber complains that I read a book, I read it so fast. Well, when you're only reading the highlighted words, it's, I hide it real well. It's just something I learned to do.
Yeah.
It's, being, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13, and the school's finally just now realizing it. I'm barely passing English or comprehension.
Yeah.
You throw math or science at me, I'm a whiz at it. You know what I mean? I'm great with my hands. So
Yeah.
that's where it is. So it's prayer.
Yeah.
The 2 times that I've been asked to actually preach a sermon have been on prayer. It's because it's what I struggle with the most is being a Christian. That's, I know that seems kind of weird, that's what you struggle with,
Yeah.
but that it is. It's praying silently to myself for somebody or something. I can do no problems. Most of them are short, sweet. God knows what needs to be said, what needs to be done. But vocally in a group
Yeah.
praying, Wednesday nights helping me,
Yeah.
it is helping me, but still sometimes it's like I get in here and it's like,
Well, again, I appreciate the vulnerability, the honesty, and I can just encourage you by saying I've seen a difference between when you first told me, you don't really do prayer, and you said you may defer, and it seems like now you're taking it on more. It's just I think it's becoming more natural
it
for you.
it is becoming more natural, but it's like, I guess since I've been running on Wednesday nights, it's like, it's not for me. Why should I worry about it? It's not, the prayer's not for me.
Yeah.
Even if I pray for myself during it, it's not for me. It's for everybody else.
Yeah.
It's for God.
Yeah. Have I told you the story about my friend Mickey?
I guess not.
Well, he passed away of pancreatic cancer, but he was at the beginning stages of our church, and we became really, really tight. And I also, outside of being his pastor, I would always meet with him and mentor him as well. Because he was a new Christian. His wife had been in church for years. And then when we started this church is when he actually started coming to church regularly. And so we became really tight. But I was asking him to pray. And he's like, man, he was just a, country record driver, and he's like, man, Scott, I don't know how to pray eloquent like you guys do. And I was like, oh man, please don't say that, because that's not what prayer's about, and I hate it that, some people might interpret it as being eloquent. I was like, man, it's just talking to God. And he's like, yeah, I understand that. And I was like, I tell you what, Mickey, just redneck it, and he's like, okay, all right. And that's from that point on, man. He's like, all right, you give me permission to redneck it. I'm going to pray. I was like, yeah, man, just talk to God like you would, talk to anybody. And I don't. He never told me after that how comfortable he was with it or whatever. But he took the mantle and he would pray, out loud and stuff like that. And I'm always gentle. I don't, I'm real cautious and tell others to be cautious if people don't want to pray out loud. Don't, because you can shame somebody and they'll never come back. Unintentionally shame somebody and they'll never come back. And there's a time to help people come out of their comfort zones, but there's a way to do it too. And then you never know what people are struggling with or whatever, what their story is. So you just got to be careful, I think, with that kind of stuff. But my perspective, man, it's just your comfort level with it and stuff. I've seen, come a long way. So last question for you. So if you could pass on one piece of wisdom from your story, what would it be?
I would honestly have to say that to love everybody, it's hard. Be like God, be like Jesus, love everybody. Those that love you, those that don't love you, those that hate you, those that are your enemies, love them.
Yeah.
That would be most of all. I've had friends, I've had enemies, good times in my life, bad times in my life. When I was homeless, I didn't have any friends. Everybody I met, when I was in that situation, it was like I was really at the point of like asking for help, and people would shun me and, oh, get away, you're vagrant, you smell bad, not having love then. Friends and family now, sometimes, they're the greatest person in the world. Sometimes family will hurt you just worse than anybody else. Still love those people that hurt you. Love.
Yeah.
That's
Such a good word, Jason. Yeah, that's definitely words of wisdom. Thank you for that. And man, thank you for coming on and letting me talk with you for a bit. And I appreciate you, brother.
no problem. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.